welcome to the Drum Show. My name is Chris Quinlan, and I'm carrying along with last week's episode about the history of rock drumming and the names of famous dudes. What I did then was essentially a bit of a double bass drum boogie, a la Alex Van Halen from the 1980s. Let me backtrack just a little bit. The episode last week talked about the start of rock drumming from the 50s into the 60s. In the 70s, I tried to name people like Earl Palmer is a great drummer from the 50s and 60s, great session player, Bernard Purdie, and then we get into all the classics, John Bonham, Ian Pace, before him Keith Moon, Ginger Baker, all of these people. What I'm talking about now, I've got to the end of the 70s basically, and now I'm talking about your typical sort of 80s rock kind of deal, and pretty much the land of Alex Van Halen in a big way, and in a kind of a rock thing, and this kind of double bass drumming. That sort of business really captured everyone's imagination. The thing about Van Halen in the day is that they were a hard rock band that really broke through into the top 40 area. So to hear something like Hot for Teacher in 1984 with the album 1984 hitting the top of the charts and all of that sort of stuff is, was really, fantastic really, because most of your stuff from the 70s, like, your typical Led Zeppelins and, for me, Jethro Tull and bands like that, they were more album bands, rather than pop bands, even though they had a couple of singles that did very well. I mean, Alex Van Halen from Van Halen seemed to capture everyone's imagination. But I stepped over into the second main dude from that era, because before him, Stuart Copeland from the Police just also captured everyone's imagination with his just the Police with their take on reggae music, and some of the stuff from that is just amazing. Walking on the Moon and Message in a Bottle and all this sort of business, and quite syncopated and all that. And it was around about 78, 79. Zappa turned everything that he was doing into a reggae style. He was pretty much straight rock up until 78, instrumental rock, all of that sort of stuff. But then reggae really took on a big thing, and no band bigger at the time than the Police with Stuart Copeland. So when you're dealing with that, and when I was having to deal with, reggae grooves and all of that sort of stuff in that kind of fashion, one of the things that I found, quickly going a bit technical on you, it is a drum show after all, is a left-hand start double paradiddle. Double paradiddle being, if I'm going to start with the left hand, left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. So if I just put the left hand on the snare and the right hand on a ride, that kind of thing there. A lot of people call reggae rock backwards instead of rim click it. Someone like that, you see. And that's what Stuart Copeland's great for. So there you go, there's the first two there, Stuart Copeland and Alex Van Halen in a big way. Now, in the mid-80s, of course, glam metal came up and all that business, big hair bands, the more makeup you wore, the tougher you were, or whatever. But a group of bands that went right opposite to that was the thrash metal genre and all that was coming up in America. And of course, we're talking about, as far as groups are concerned, you're starting to talk about what's usually called the Big Four. You've got Metallica, you've got Anthrax, you've got Slayer, and Megadeth. Okay, of course, arguably the most successful, probably the most successful, is Metallica. So we start talking about Lars Ulrich as a drummer. He's got a bit of a polarizing kind of thing. There's a lot of people who love him. There's people who don't love him so much, or used to love him but think, went off him or whatever. You can't take away from the fact that Metallica have got some classic albums. Things like "And Justice for All" is a masterpiece of metal drumming, especially with their classic one, where you got all that sort of stuff, where you've got the bass drums following the snare drum. It's just great playing. And I'm going to get into trouble because I'm not mentioning favourite drummers, and I'm leaving out some of my own favourite drummers as well. But as far as with our thrash metal, and I'm up to the 80s now, you Lars Ulrichs and all that sort of business, just amazing stuff. That worked into this kind of business. We now go into where 80s rock gave way to grunge, and we've got the 90s now. Okay, so I'll be back after the break talking about that a little bit. There we go. Right.